Hello again, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you're listening from. Welcome back to the Mind of the Meek, where in this episode I'll be sharing my thoughts on why God allows us to suffer. But before we get into this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like the content, also to subscribe, and to share your thoughts down below in the comment section. Now, without a further ado, let's get into this episode. Whenever one asks God for more faith, God interprets that as a request for more circumstances. Asking God for a stronger faith is as requesting challenges. Why? Because struggles are the opportunities to develop a stronger faith. Consider Psalm 23 verse 4 that says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." You see, the valley of the shadow of death isn't your destination. It's where you walk through to get to your destination. Also, consider Psalm 119 verse 71 that says, "It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I may learn your statutes." There is this idea that many people happen to believe to be true. And the idea is that sufferings make you stronger, which, however, I would beg to differ. It's not the sufferings that makes one stronger or weaker. Rather, it's their response to sufferings that determines the outcome of their strength or weakness. Because passing through the waters is a response, and conversely, remaining in the waters is also a response. Why? Say there are two people in the same circumstance. One remained in it, whereas the other found a way out. Why is that? Because one used their experience of suffering as an opportunity to get stronger, and the other used their experience of the same suffering as an opportunity to find excuses, thus becoming weary. That suggests to me that their outcome is all based on their response to the circumstance. It's your response to circumstances that either builds your strength or causes you to surrender to weakness. Consider what Isaiah 43 verse 2 says. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you." Notice that God didn't say when you stay in the water, or stay in the rivers, or stay in the fire. Rather, he said when you pass through them, implying that your circumstances aren't your destiny. But why do we have to undergo circumstances? Well, because circumstances is God's opportunity to be God, and when you experience his power in your given circumstance, your belief in him will increase. Without circumstances, God is still God, of course, because circumstances does not define God's power, but the very opposite. However, without circumstances, God's power seems to be irrelevant to us. Why? Because what opportunity would he have to prove to you that he can exceed your expectations so that you can trust him? Note well, he doesn't have to prove to himself because he knows himself, but rather he has to prove to us because we don't know him and most of us don't believe in him. So we want to have a reason to, which is fair enough. Also, something worth considering. If sin didn't exist, then the sacrifice of Jesus wouldn't be necessary. His sacrifice was for a purpose, and that was to provide the opportunity to redeem humanity because we were all at stake or at the risk of being lost. Therefore, circumstance of sin existing, thus putting humanity at risk of being lost, necessitated the great love of God to be shown through the death of his son, so we could experience eternity as a result. In like manner, your circumstances necessitates God to reveal his power in your life so that your soul's demands may be satisfied. You see, trust precedes love. Trust involves risks. Risks leads to growth, and growth sustains love. But growth comes from taking risks. And taking risks start with trusting. You see, trust should be substantiated, meaning it should be proven. Trust entails risks. Trust entails exposure to circumstances. When one goes through a series of adversities, what happens psychologically is that they gradually become desensitized, resistant, and unperturbed by those circumstances, which is the upshot of having consistent exposure to them. This is why when God allows us to suffer, it's an exercise of what I call exposure therapy, which is the idea of the process of undergoing circumstances consistently to the point of becoming accustomed to them, thus developing endurance, which reduces the impact of adversities whenever we experience them. I've made a quote that is pertinent to the context of this message, which also encapsulates it, and it states, "Circumstances is the premise on which God exerts his power to prove himself trustworthy, thus appeasing one's need of faith." So the moral of this episode is to convey that God allows us to undergo difficult seasons and periods of our lives for us to trust him and to build character over time so as to better reflect his image. So that's all I had in mind to share today, guys. Thank you for watching and for listening, and be sure to join me on the next episode on the Mind of the Meek. See you there.